Please comment where you are watching in the world. This a while back in a thread about Tinder. It was a pretty spectacularly bad. I used it. I'm a fat ugly man. I matched with a girl who wasn't too shabby looking, texted for a few days until we were both off. I picked her up, she was very cute, went to dinner at a Japanese steakhouse and had a good time, drank some sake. She suggested we go back to my place. Woo. We stopped by her apartment to get her car, and she wants to get clothes. She follows me to my house, and we make out in my driveway for a few and start to move towards the house. I'm excited. Gonna get laid and all, yes sir, been a while. So we are on my front porch and she goes, "You, what's that?" and points to this baseball-sized toad that hangs out on my porch. This is his second year at there. Anyways, I explain he is cool, and I knock beetles off my porch light for to eat, and stuff. She walks over to him, looks at me like intense eye contact, and proceeded to slowly stomp on my toad. Now at this point I was experiencing several emotions: shock, anger, rage. I shouted at her, "WTF, why'd you do that?" To which she replied, "I wanted to make you mad so you'd fuck me hard." I was speechless while I processed what I had just witnessed. I told her to get the F of my property. She flips out, we yell back and forth. I sprayed her with the hose, and she finally leaves only to show up 20 minutes later topless on my deck in the backyard. She had walked from down the road, and pulled like 6 pickets down from my fence to get in the backyard. Cops came, she cried her way out of trouble with them and left. 2 years ago at a party, I met this girl. Let's call her Sarah. She was cute, humorous, and seemed quite relaxed at the time. We were easy with each other, got each other's phone numbers, and for a few days afterward, the texts flew back and forth. Nothing particularly deep, just the usual "how's your day?" type or "hello, what are you doing?" After a couple of days of this, she asked me to her home. I thought to myself, good chance ahead of you, boy. So I went over to her house, and everything was copacetic at first. She let me in, took me to her room, and I thought, this is getting somewhere, now we're cooking. It wasn't one of those awkward big group hangouts where you meet your date's entire family en masse. It was just the two of us. What a great frame, right? Wrong. The minute we got settled down in her room, she pulled out her phone to text somebody. Now I'm cool with this. I'm not asking her to sit and give me 100% of her attention every second. But this was pushing it. It was at a whole extra level. As if there was nothing but empty space all around her, and not a single human being left in this world except her. I was invisible with the doors closed. She wasn't an occasional phone checker. She was in touch with the world. I might have yelled, "Hey, your house is on fire," and she went stone deaf. Politeness was my first impulse. "How have you been?" I asked. But the clicking sounds of thumbs on a handheld screen offered neither a hello nor a response. So she's dissing me. Anyway, I tried one more time. "Did you go out and do anything fun these last few days?" Nothing. She wouldn't even look at me. There I am staring at some girl that called me over, and she's not listening. Bombs could have been dropping. Aliens could have been landing. And all this girl would have noticed was if some text came in on her cell phone. A few minutes of embarrassing silence passed. Then I realized 2 things. 1, she wasn't going to give me any attention anytime soon. And 2, for the life of me, I couldn't get why I was still there. So I did what any reasonably self-respecting guy would do. I quit sitting around at someone's house being ignored and started wandering. I left her room and continued onward into the home. I might just as well check out everything else they have here if she is not going to talk with me. I poked my head into the neighboring room, which turned out to be a living room. There I met her mom and sister. Now you would think that this might get even more embarrassing, but initially, they were pretty nice. They were decorating for Christmas, and before I could even tell my story, they asked if I would come and help them. "Let a strong man come," her mom said with a laugh. Her sister, of some attractiveness, Kat, called out, "Come on, help us." I couldn't help but think it was time for some people to wake up. Sarah obviously didn't want to hang out with me, so she could fend off at least one of those fighting windmills. And anyway, Sarah's sister looked nice. I spent myself into what would be called one of these, I met the wrong girl, but things worked out with her siblings' stories. That optimism lasted about 5 minutes. What I found was, Sarah's sister was not only fairly attractive, but she was also nuts. Laughing with a snort, there seemed to be no stopping her from letting out flatulence, without the slightest apology or care in the world. And her mom? No better than that. They were at each other's throats over where to put the decorations as soon as the two of them had a good chance. Not in a funny way, though. It was like watching a reality show on cable about completely dysfunctional families. And on top of that, as I brought up garlands and threaded Christmas lights, the two of them just stood around arguing. I was basically an unpaid intern in their holiday chaos. After 20-odd minutes of this crap, I thought I could take no more. I told them I would be leaving, and their parlor became completely silent. Dead silent. They just looked at me as if I had committed some heinous crime. It was so uncomfortable and tense in the room that by the time I got out of their door, I felt like I had to wash off all this embarrassment in a shower. Step ahead a few years. I can't recall I had contact with her, and for that matter, I'd almost forgotten the whole thing. But next thing you know, she invites me to a Halloween party. I was hesitant at first, and with that initial experience, I did not feel any rush to return. However, something piqued my curiosity. I decided to go and check it out. Perhaps things had changed. I arrived at the party more than anything else. Normally being equipped for a fallout's enough, drink, songs, and chat the average. Sarah was there, had a couple of words with, but it was plain she was not having any of my suggestions to turn in. She was a guy I was happy to peruse. The man appeared to be a nice sort. We talked about sports and so on for quite a while. He was sitting in a chair the whole time, so I didn't get to know him too well, but he seemed pretty ratings high. Everyone having a good time. In the middle of the night, I reckon I should go home. When I went to shake his hand, he stood up, and that was when I saw two things. First, he was missing 2 fingers on his right hand. Second, he had a real peg leg. No doubt about it, the guy was dressed up as a pirate. He was really giving it his all, even had an eye patch on. I couldn't tell whether it's a coincidence or just deciding to take the plunge, but anyway, I felt he was really something. I shook his hand, what was left of it, and then wished them both luck. As I left, it was like disappearing into the middle of some surreal dream sequence. A couple of years ago, I was still going through a breakup. And this wasn't one of those we just drifted apart kind of breakups. No, this was messy, ugly, and it completely destroyed me mentally and physically. So when this deliciously broad-shouldered man that I worked with asked me out, I just went for it. He was charming, witty, and to be honest, I wasn't used to it for a long time. My self-esteem was constantly being trampled by anyone who wasn't actually trying to make it feel worthless. I thought, maybe this is the start of something different. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. Anyway, he picks me up for our date, and everything seems fine at first. He's being sweet, complimenting me, asking me about my day, basically, all the usual first date stuff. Then he lets loose the first verbal bombshell. Hey, I really want to go see the new Twilight movie tonight. First of all, let me just say that I have nothing against Twilight or anything. It's just that I never got into it. Vampires and werewolves? Sure, okay. But love triangles so sullen they bleed out angst all over the floor, and guys who gleam in the sun while they're brooding on their Matt Neal blogs? It doesn't really float my boat. Still, I thought to myself, well, why not? He seemed so enthusiastic about it that I didn't want to be a wet blanket. Thus, against my instincts, I consented. What he hadn't told me was that last night was opening night for Twilight. Oh yuck! If you're not already creeped out now, you will be in a minute. Since the next hour would involve explaining to vast crowds of teenage girls where we each were in line, the thought made my toes curl. Normally, this would have raised a giggle, except that the very phrase never left my lips. As for giggling, we weren't anywhere near that much fun yet. Well, no sooner had I managed to tell them about my contacts and glasses not fitting properly under the helmet of my batting equipment, as any good third batter should do. More accurately, Andrew Jackson already had said boys after 2 warnings get rid of everything they have now on them but their jockstrap, Julia. Especially at midnight during exam season. Anyway, everyone had long lines before us, the one nearest us being lengthened by so many girls, once again to be reordered earlier. Talking about taking steam out of a fast overtaking car. Well, at school during swing out, cheers were shouted from half a block away, and then if at any time somebody so much as mentioned, Jacob and Edward, let's say pleasant dreams. I consider myself basically well educated and never have heard the likes of this before. Tight popping noise that kind of makes your middle ear feel full of air, each shriller than the last. Just thinking about the sound, I could taste little round granules of popped corn jammed on my teeth. Now try to play it straight too. And so I continued past the TV trucks, still plastering on that artificial grin. I would rather die inside than let them see how badly all this made me feel. But then it got even worse, because I had gotten into one of those moods where nothing mattered at all, and now the one thing left went bad too. After all, I had heard cliché enough hell. It's a G nevertheless in English. Nothing at all. New review, September 1st, 2005. The usual sort of girl. We stand in line waiting, and I try to block out this madness all around me when I feel something looking at me. You know that feeling? You get a sense of it before you even turn around, right? So I turn my head but do not bother standing up. There she is, standing cheek to jowl with him one row back, staring straight at me. My old boyfriend's war-axe sister. All these people on Earth, and now. She gives me a look like it just so happens that my entire life has fallen over Bromwich, or something equally despicable. For the record, I never really liked her even back when things with my ex were good. She was the type who feeds on conflict, always has something mean to say. And here she is now, standing in line for Twilight, about to make my already uncomfortable night even worse. Can't ignore it. I couldn't escape from her at all because when we finally got to go into the theater, who pops up sitting down right near me but... Right. The sister is there, sitting right next to me, sharing armrests with me. I couldn't make it up if I tried. Now I'm sandwiched between my date, who is way too excited for this movie, and my ex's sister, who is practically radiating hatred, trying to pretend I'm fine. Then the movie started, and that... I don't mean any offense, but if you are a fan of Twilight, I just couldn't get into it. Whenever Jacob took off his shirt, the entire theater burst into an ear-shattering high-pitched, whoa, whoa. It was like being in a concert for screaming banshees. In the meantime, I'm just sitting there, bored to tears, trying to avoid eye contact with the human ball of spite sitting next to me. After what felt like forever, the movie finally ended, and I was ready to call it a day. But my date had other ideas in mind. He wanted to go back to his place for some drinks. Since I thought that I had deserved a stiff drink after surviving that, I said yes. He was really hot, and I was still in the phase after breaking up with someone where I had to show myself I could move on. So we went back to his place, had a few drinks, and then one thing led to another. Now, this is where things went downhill fast. Needless to say, this guy was lousy in bed, very lousy. I mean, I've had some SOSO experiences, but this was just off the scale awfully bad. It was like he'd read a book about sex written by an author who never actually experienced sex. Lying there, I thought, get through this, everything's all right. Get through this, and you'll never have to see him again. But after that disaster, I was ready to leave. Then, he hit me with the creepiest vibe just before midnight. The next morning, before leaving for work as usual, he turned and said to me, "I want you here when I get back." Oh, really? I kind of laughed it off. I thought he might be joking. But when he got serious, I couldn't help but feel that there was no way to explain such a strange request. So he said to me very earnestly, "No, really. Please don't go. I'd be so happy if you stayed. I really want you to stay." This is the point where all my alarms start to go off. The way he said it was sort of like begging, and when he did, my skin crawled. I tried to act casual, telling him I had to go home and get ready for the day. But he would not let it go. He kept on asking me to stay, and the more persistent he became, the more uncomfortable I felt. In the end, I gave him an offhand okay, just to get him to leave. As soon as he was out the door, I collected all my things and walked out. I thought that was an end to it. Just another bad date to put on the list. But then, a few months later, I saw his face in the news. Evidently, he'd been arrested for murder. Real, actual murder. And I had just been sitting there, watching it on TV, trying to take in the fact that I had dated, and even slept with, a man who turned out to be a murderer. I even Googled his name to make sure it wasn't some strange coincidence. No, it was just him. Same face, same name, same creepy vibe. The length of this affair, this completely big, genuinely awkward machine of a story, is still haunting me every time I look at my phone. Well, anyway, I can laugh about it now, sort of, but at the time I literally wanted to crawl into a hole and die. It was one of those dates that starts off bad, manages to get even worse as time goes on, then adds an extra dollop of cringe right at the very end. If there's a hall of fame for botched first dates, this one should get its own entry. So let me set the scene. I was in my early 20s, innocent and happy-go-lucky. I was an utter idiot when it came to dating. I had met this girl, let's call her Melissa, in our local community theater group. She was beautiful, slim, and quick-witted. And of course, she was way out of my league, which made me even more eager to ask her out. To my surprise, she said yes. I was over the moon, convinced we'd be having one of those perfect, romantic dates that you see in the movies. Actually, not so much. We decided to go to see Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. Do not ask me why I thought that was an appropriate first date movie. Perhaps I flattered myself that an unusual choice would make me seem unique and interesting. Maybe I just wanted to see this film really badly. In any event, I collected her, we got some popcorn, and then we went into the theater. Everything was going fine, so fine. I was nervous but trying to act cool, making conversation while we waited for the previews to begin. But that was the onset of the unraveling. There was no way that I felt on the same wavelength, at least not after we started talking at all. Our opinions on things were quite different. Politics, religion, you name it. And I was young and just plain didn't yet have the art of keeping quiet down to a science as I am now. As a result, you get stuck trying to figure out what to say next. Familiar disagreements quickly turned into lame half-arguments. We weren't screaming at each other or anything, but there appeared to be more and more pressure in the air as I could tell she was just as uneasy as I was. Inside, I was kicking myself. How come you can't just talk about the weather or how much you love popcorn like normal people do? When the film began to roll, I was already mentally declaring this date a bust. Instead of coming to terms with this and moving on, however, I made one simple but brilliant decision. I took out my phone and sent a text to my friend. Let's call her Megan, which said exactly what was happening around us. The date is going so badly. We have nothing in common. It's really awkward. Pressing send brought me a little relief. Okay, at least there's someone else out there who knows how miserable I am. But then ring went the unmistakable sound of a text notification. The notification didn't come from my telephone. No, it came from Melissa's phone. Time stood still. My insides dropped. I looked on in horror as Melissa fished her phone from her purse, opened the message, and started to read it. I watched her expression change in real time, from curiosity to puzzled bewilderment to oh. She finally turned to me and asked, with a hurt, disbelieving tone, "Did you mean to send that to me?" I swear, at that moment, I had what doctors call a near-death cringe. My mind was scrambling to find an explanation, but all I could manage was a stammered, "Oh my God, I didn't mean to send that to you. I was trying to text a friend. I'm so sorry. I must have accidentally clicked your name instead of Megan's, or replied to the wrong message thread, or something." To tell you the truth, I don't even remember exactly what I said because my brain was just screaming, "Fix it. Fix it. Fix it." In fairness to Melissa, she didn't immediately storm out or throw her drink in my face, which, personally, I'd say I deserved. She just looked at me for a moment, clearly upset, then said, "Wow. Okay." I could feel the weight of her disappointment, and it was colossal. I made one last attempt to preserve the situation by blurting out something like, "Anyway, despite everything, I really do enjoy your company. You are so brilliant and beautiful, and I am just such an idiot for screwing this up." Which was true. She was from a different world, and I knew it. However, she managed it. She agreed to see the evening out and complete the date, as friends. Suffice it to say, prettiest friends meeting of my life. We didn't even talk while watching Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. That, let alone anyone else, up until the last minute, I couldn't enjoy the movie. All I was replaying this disaster over in my head. Each time I looked over at her, I had this vision of her glancing down at the phone. She was most likely replaying the part where I'd texted her about her. When the movie finally ended, we walked out of the theater to our cars, said our goodbyes, and went on our separate ways. I was greatly relieved because it was over. Another nail-biting day at least, but also deeply embarrassed. Just like that, it seemed pretty sure to me this would be my last encounter with Melissa if you didn't mind. But wait, it gets worse. The text I sent to Megan telling her all about my date. That was the last time they let me text from the back of a cab. Since apparently, if you haven't learned yet how texting while you're in your feelings can ruin relationships, no amount of actual experience will teach you. I tapped out a long message to her on how odd the date had been, how I'd texted Melissa in the movie, and assured myself there would never be a sequel. Got it all off my chest bar one thing. Pushed send. The phone vibrated in my hands, and the blood rushed to my head. "You sent it to me again." It was a mistake. I don't remember anything after that. In all likelihood, I fainted. It was all I could do not to respond to what she'd written, and to let her know I wouldn't be the one doing the calling anymore. I wasn't physically capable of any other action. What could I have said at that point? Oops. My mistake. Hardly. There was no recovering from this. Melissa deserved better than that, and I deserved my shame sitting squarely on me to think over what had happened. Thinking back, I can laugh at it most of all. It's also a story that ought to warn you. Never text while you're still on a date about the date, and who you're sending messages to should be checked twice, or even 3 times. Take my word for it, it's worth the effort. Because otherwise, you might end up as I did. The person who accidentally texted his date twice on one date itself how bad things were going. And believe you me, that's an award which nobody ever wants to win, but is his at last. Freshly divorced, and still trying to figure out how the hell modern dating works, I decided to try my luck on OkCupid. This was my first real attempt at online dating, and I clearly had no idea what I was doing. One day, I get a message from this woman. No profile pic. Now even then, being the clueless newbie that I was, I knew that was a big ol' red flag. But I was new to this, trying to stay open-minded, and her messages seemed friendly enough. I mean, what's the harm in chatting, right? Still, I wasn't completely stupid, so I asked her for a picture. She gives me some weird excuse about how she's using her daughter's laptop and couldn't upload any photos. It didn't make much sense, but eventually, she does text me a couple of pictures. She's decent looking, no supermodel or anything, but enough for me to think, alright, could be worse. Plus, she's flirty, and it had been a while since I'd had someone flirt with me, so I kept the conversation going. After a bit of back and forth, I decided to be bold and ask her out. I was hesitant, sure, something about her didn't sit right with me, but I figured I'd give it a shot. Worst case, it'd be a funny story, right? Oh, pass me if only you knew. To play it safe, I set the date for a Sunday afternoon. Low pressure, quick escape if needed, and I even lied about having to pick up my kids later just to give myself an easy out. Spider senses? Fully tingling. I get to the restaurant, and there she is. She greets me with a big smile, a hug, and, wait for it, a kiss on the cheek. Bold move for a first date, but okay, maybe she's just super friendly. I notice right away that she's already working her way through a pint of beer. Not a big deal, I thought. Maybe she's nervous and wanted to take the edge off. I sit down, order myself a beer, and try to get a vibe for how this is going to go. Let me tell you, I never caught up to her drinking pace for the rest of the date. The woman was on a mission. Oh, and here's where things get weird. She hands me 2 gifts. Yes, you read that right, gifts. On a first date. She gives me silly putty for my kids, who are like 12 and 14, and probably couldn't care less about silly putty. And lip balm for me. Lip balm? What even is that? Was she trying to hint at something? Was I about to be kissed again? I had no idea what to make of it, so I just awkwardly thanked her and shoved the stuff in my pocket. As we're talking, I start to realize a couple of things. First, she's a let's call it eccentric. The conversation is all over the place, and she's throwing out these wild stories that don't totally add up. Second, and this is the kicker, her story about being divorced gradually morphs into we're separated, to I'm still living with my husband, but I'm definitely moving out soon. Oh, okay. Cool. Totally normal first date stuff, right? Nothing screams stable, like being on a date with someone who might still be married. By the time she's 3 drinks in, I notice she's swaying a little on her stool. Alarm bells are ringing in my head, so I suggest we order some food. My hope was that eating would sober her up a bit and maybe stabilize the situation. She agrees and orders something, but when the food comes, she takes one single bite, and then goes right back to drinking. Meanwhile, I'm sitting there, eating my meal, wondering how the hell this woman is still functional after this much booze. Once I'm done eating, she suggests we move to the lounge area, where there's a fire and some big leather couches. Sounds cozy enough, so I agree. We sit down, and within 5 minutes, she's basically draped across me. Like full-on in my lap, trying to make out with me. And not in a cute, flirty way, in an aggressive, if I don't escape soon, I'm going to need an adult kind of way. I'm sitting there, stiff as a board, trying to figure out how to extract myself from this situation. I remind her, very politely mind you, that I have to pick up my kids soon. She doesn't seem to care, and just keeps trying to climb me like I'm a jungle gym. Now I'm in a real pickle. She's clearly too drunk to be making good decisions, but I'm not her babysitter, and I need to get the hell out of there. I offer to walk her to her car and suggest she take a nap before driving. It's the best I could come up with in the moment. She agrees, but every 20 meters or so, she stops, pushes me up against a wall, and tries to kiss me again. It's like escorting a drunken octopus. By the time we get to her car, I'm exhausted. But wait, it gets worse. She spends a solid 5 minutes trying to pull me into her car. I'm talking full-blown tug of war, her trying to drag me into the passenger seat while I'm desperately trying to extract myself without causing a scene. Somehow, I managed to get her to let go and make my escape. I walked to my car, which is about 5 minutes away, breathing a sigh of relief and thinking, thank God that's over. Oh, but it wasn't over. Just as I'm unlocking my car, I hear tires screeching. I turn around, and there she is pulling up next to me in her car. She jumps out and climbs into my driver's seat before I even know what's happening. At this point, I'm torn between laughing at the sheer insanity of it all and being genuinely concerned that she might not leave me alone. I finally manage to pull her out of my car without getting arrested for assault, jump into my car, and speed off like I'm in an action movie. I didn't stop driving until I was halfway home. The next day, I get a text from her. I had so much fun last night. I'm not normally like that. Sure you're not. I didn't even bother responding. Blocked. Deleted. Goodbye forever. Oh, and here's the cherry on top. She was a nurse. At a methadone clinic. Because of course she was. Honestly, the whole thing was such a train wreck that I can't even be mad about it anymore. It's just one of those stories you tell at parties to make people laugh and feel better about their own dating lives. Online dating, man. What a wild ride. This is the story of how breakfast became one of the most insane mornings ever for me, and bad news busted up bumpers. So yeah, breakfast. This really changed things around a little bit. I mean, who would have known all this was going to happen just because I got ready and created a new face for the day, knowing that no matter what happened afterwards, no matter what happened in general, my dignity and probably my rear bumper would eventually be damaged. That said, it all started with this men's soccer team I joined. I couldn't run anymore, so I was just in it for fun while trying to keep busy and meet new people when we made the connection. Call her Lisa, let's. Lisa was bright and humorous. She swept the light away from any other woman in sight. We spoke a few times after games. I thought maybe why not ask her out. So after one contest, I wondered if she'd like to eat breakfast together on Saturday morning. Needless to say, I was very surprised when she agreed. I had a feeling that day was going to turn out pretty good. No, make that really good. You're doing good, man. You're out here making moves, and they're working for you. Saturday came. I showed up at her place bright and early. I'd been racking my brains for a week over where to bring her, but finally settled on this dump of a place that I'd been to a couple other times. It was cheap, the service was great, and it had a really cozy atmosphere not too far off from what you want on your first date. A place you can feel comfortable in. Inside, we sat down in a booth and ordered our food. I went for the garden omelet because it was healthier and looked like I was getting my act together. She ordered pancakes and coffee, and we enjoyed what was meant to be a nice quiet breakfast together at the time, when suddenly everything started going crazy. For a few minutes there, things were all right. We chatted about football, work, and other things two people on their first date might normally say to each other. Everything seemed fine. Then Lisa, oh boy, she decided to throw a wrench in the works. Suddenly, she started talking about what she kind of liked. And by what she liked, I mean she went into a detailed breakdown of all the kinky shit she was into. Breath play being dominated, whips, cuffs being hit, but, not too hard. She said it as if she were catching up with an old friend, matter of fact, and so proud of herself. Meanwhile, I was sitting there with my fork halfway to my mouth, trying to make sense of what was happening. It's not that I mean to shame anybody's kinks, no. You do you. But it was only like 20 minutes into the date, and I was unprepared for that kind of openness. As Kevin Hart would say, she was getting too fast, too kinky. I tried to keep my cool, nodding and throwing in the occasional, oh, really? Interesting. But inside I was spinning. Is this normal? Is this something people do on breakfast dates now? Am I the weird one for not bringing my sex life up over pancakes? By the time the check arrived, I was both interested and overwhelmed, but then everything was going to change. There I was, ready to pay for breakfast like a proper gentleman, wallet in hand. But wait a minute. There must be a mistake. I checked pockets and turned bags over on their contents, then gave one last thorough search through all of my stuff. The wallet wasn't where it should have been after a night's football coaching. With a deep sigh, I wrote down Lisa's number. Then I left the money on the table and fled. She paid for both of us, and I said I'd pay her back on Venmo as soon as I got home. So we leave the diner, and I figure that's it. I drop her off, tell her thanks again for breakfast, and we go our separate ways. But when we pull up at her place, she turns around and asks, "Fancy comin' in fair make tea?" I might have hesitated at her invitation, under normal circumstances. But it would have been rude not to consider my own feelings and the fact that she bought me breakfast, didn't it? With complete idiocy, I agree. We go inside and things happen quickly, very quickly. 1 minute we're sitting on our couch talking. All we do is small talk. Next thing we know, it's in the bedroom together. And this young man's having some of his dirtiest, most mind-blowing sex up to then. Let's not get into that too much, but I'll say one thing was certain. Lisa meant what she'd said about her tastes, and then some at my expense also. Whips were present, among other things. I think she even called me sir on occasion. It was one memorable story itself. But who was going to object? I'm still lying in bed, and my brain is still trying to process what just happened. At that moment, my brain is in the fog of post-coital bliss where nothing seems real. And I am thinking to myself, wow, did that just happen? Then, however, the whole situation seems to take a sharp left turn for the worse. After Lisa's phone buzzes, she looks at the message and her eyes get as big as a dime. Then she sits bolt upright and says, in a complete panic, "Oh my God, you have to go. The boyfriend's off work unexpectedly, and if he finds us here, he'll throw me out of the house." What? I just sat there looking at her, trying to take in her words. "Your boyfriend?" I said in a voice thick with disbelief. This is the first I've heard of anyone being her boyfriend. Yet I never heard her mention anything about a boyfriend while we were playing kickball, while we were having breakfast, or during times when people could be expected to make some mention if somebody had a boyfriend. And now after sleeping with her, or at least with a woman in her boyfriend's bed, I now see, and not before. I feel sick. His sheets were on this bed. This was probably his pillow. Today's round of dates, for which she paid, remember, was financed by her boyfriend. I felt as though my stomach were filled with lead. Lisa was practically pushing me out of bed now, desperately trying to get dressed and throwing my clothes at me. "Hurry," she begged in a whisper. "He'll be home at any moment." And I did not need to be told twice. I got dressed in part. For example, I ran out with a sock in my pocket, my shirt inside out, and headed for the door as if my life depended on it. In my hurry to escape from there, I vaulted into my car and threw it into reverse. And flattened her mailbox. It was only when I heard that familiar sound of thumping wood and earth that I realized exactly what it was I had done. At that moment, I didn't much care. I raced out of there hoping her boyfriend wouldn't come along the road. When I finally got home, I sat in the car and thought over the final outcome of all this madness. There in the rear bumper, I suddenly saw a small crack, another nice reminder of my impromptu, make that unplanned mailbox demolition. Perfect, the cherry on top of this dung pile called morning. Viewed in retrospect, the entire disaster seems almost comical in its completeness. The forgotten wallet? Embarrassing but fixable. The kinky breakfast talk? Just a touch too intense, but doable. But the real kicker became clear when I discovered that I had just made love to somebody in her boyfriend's bed. One thing's for sure, I never saw Lisa again. At soccer, I dodged her like a killer bee, deleted her number from my phone, and did my best to forget about the whole episode. Still, every time I see a cracked bumper or crooked mailbox, it's a poignant reminder of how sometimes the wildest stories come from the least expected quarters. This is the one that still makes me cringe and laugh and get a little angry all at the same time. It's been years, but I'll never forget the sheer in-your-face boldness of this guy, or the fact that I found myself stuck in his car as he tried to get Prince to fly cover for him musically, while he hit on me in Hollywood's inimitable and incestuous tag team style. It's the sort of date that really makes you reevaluate heretofore held opinions on human behavior. Hold on to your chair, because this is the tale of how a decent evening bundled off the tracks in most spectacular fashion. So here's the setup, everybody. Back in college, I worked as a barista in a little cafe near campus. We had lots of regulars there, and this guy, let's call him Dave, was one of them. He used to come in a couple of times a week, always chirpy and chatty, and we'd built up a nice, no real polite you do your job and I'll do mine kind of cheerful relationship/rapport. He was good looking, seemed bright, and had a sense of humor. One thing I did start to wonder about was that he'd stand around at the counter just a bit longer than he had to. And sure enough, as always, he would make it a specific point when coming through my set cashier window, even though somebody else was free. So when he finally did ask me out, I wasn't exactly spooked, I was flattered. I mean, why not? He seemed an okay kind of guy and hadn't been too much trouble around for me to sample his wares so far. Had he? With those details out of the way, plans changed to include sushi followed by a visit to a bar. The date actually started out going pretty well. I even enjoyed myself. Dinner was nice. All our talk proceeded smoothly enough. Nothing momentous was said or done. But he was an engaging, vibrant character nevertheless. He asked me about myself. He genuinely seemed to care what I had to say, and he didn't talk with his mouth full. Low bar for standards that it is. People fail constantly at this simple thing. Bonus points, then. He also picked a good Japanese place for us to eat. By the time we left for a drink in the bar, I supposed, okay then, maybe this will work out after all. Still in the bar, things seemed to be proceeding more or less smoothly. He ordered us both drinks, nothing fancy, just your usual run-of-the-mill items, and we went on talking. Yes, there were a few moments when he seemed a little cocky, but it didn't stand out to me so much that it set off alarm bells. If anything, I thought he was simply keen to put his best foot forward and impress me. It was a perfectly decent first date overall. Not exactly fireworks, but not a disaster either. I wasn't sitting there mentally mapping out our wedding yet, nor was I forensically planning my escape route. Tonight, after the bar, he drove me home. He drew up outside my building, and just as I was going to say thank you and good night, I noticed something off. He wasn't moving. Instead, he killed the car, unbuckled his seatbelt, and uttered this expectant look. At first, I was confused. I thought he wanted to chat with me a little longer before heading out, so I was saying things like, "Well, thanks for tonight, I had a great time." But then in the most ordinary, casual way, he said, "So are we going inside now?" I blinked at him, really taken aback. "No," I answered. Then I laughed, because maybe he was joking. He wasn't. His frown deepened, and he looked very puzzled. "Why not?" he asked in a tone of disbelief, like I'd said the earth was flat. I could see him trying to make the pieces fit in his head, as if the idea just wouldn't compute. And then, whoa Nelly, the logic began. "I did everything right," he said. "I bought you dinner. I bought you a drink. So, I should get to come inside. That's how it's supposed to work." I just stared at him, completely gobsmacked. That's how it's supposed to work? Was this some kind of business deal list? Dinner, drink, sex. Like he had reached a new level on a dating app or something. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Hang on," I said, striving to maintain my voice. "Do you really believe that buying me sushi means you're entitled to come into my apartment?" "Oh sure," he said dryly, as though this were the most obvious thing in the world. "That's how it usually goes." At this point, I was part mad, part baffled, and just plain freaked out. It wasn't just his sense of entitlement. It was the sheer flair with which he said it, as if he genuinely felt that it was like telling us all something inarguable about the universe. I tried to end the conversation as diplomatically as I could. "Listen, I had a very nice evening tonight, but I'm just not going to have you over." But he wouldn't let up. "Again, why not?" he pressed. "I mean, I paid for dinner and everything else. I thought we were having a great time." "I'm sorry," I began to say, my tone growing chill. "But we had a good time together. That doesn't mean I owe you anything. That's not how it works. I mean, if you think things weren't awkward enough," he starts arguing with me. "Why, you should get to come inside." I kid you not, this man just sat there in his car, in the dead of night outside my apartment, and tried to have a debate with me like we were in some sort of courtroom drama. "What am I supposed to do?" he exclaimed at the measure. "This is wrong." I was really feeling anxious by this time. It wasn't that he had done anything overtly threatening, but the atmosphere was not good. Not at all good. And then I realized that he might try to follow me into my apartment or even force his way in. I was really starting to ponder an escape strategy when he suddenly reached for the car stereo. "You know what?" he asked. "I think I know what the problem is." "Oh no. Oh no." He hit play, and the opening chords of a Prince song filled the car. "Here," he said, turning to me with a kind of self-satisfaction I have never seen. "Listen to this. Prince is sexy. All girls dig Prince." I don't even know how to express the emotional tumult of that moment. How can it be put into words? Shock? Revulsion? Pleasure? Wrath? I simply could not form a thought. This man who had just tried to argue his way into my apartment, was now trying to scam me with Prince. With no disguises, he said even, "This will stir up the passion in you." I did not know how to reply to that. I just sat there frozen, while the song Kiss played in the background like some kind of fever dream soundtrack. Was he really expecting something to happen? Did he really think I was going to stop dead and say, "You know what, Prince is sexy. Let us go in"? Let me tell you, that was not happening. The instant the song had finished, I pulled off my safety belt and ran. I wouldn't even give him time to say goodbye. "Open the door. Thanks for the ride, good night." I snapped the words out loud as I half flung the door open and sprinted off to my building. I did not look back. I did not want to know if he was watching me. I just wanted to get inside, bolt the door, and pretend it never happened. In hindsight, it's almost amusing, almost. But at the time, it was terrifying. The sense of entitlement, the heated argument, the Prince CD, it was like being trapped in some bizarre, misogynistic screwball movie gone really wrong. Needless to say, I never saw him again. And after that, I definitely started screening my dates a lot more carefully. But hey, at least I have a story now. And it serves as a good reminder that whenever someone tries to use Prince to manipulate you, you had better start running. Run and don't look back. So as you expect, this story of mine involves online dating. Specifically POF, plenty of fish, or as I now like to call it, the aquarium of regret. So there I was scrolling through profiles, not expecting much. My standards were pretty reasonable at the time. Don't be a serial killer, have a sense of humor, and I don't know, maybe look somewhat like your pictures. Enter her. Cute face in her profile pic. Big smile, nice eyes, and her body type was listed as athletic. She lived downtown, just like me, so it felt like the stars were aligning. So I figured, alright, let's see where this goes. I messaged her, and she responded almost immediately with a flurry of emojis and enthusiasm. We chatted, she seemed nice. After some back and forth, I asked if she wanted to meet up for coffee. Simple, low stakes. She said, okay, I'll be wearing a purple sweater. Now at this point, I was cautiously optimistic. She seemed sweet, we lived close to each other, and I was in the middle of a dry spell that could have rivaled the Sahara. A coffee date sounded easy enough. The Starbucks was about a 10-minute walk from my place, and since parking downtown is basically a myth unless you want to sell a kidney for a spot, I decided to hoof it. The whole way there, I was hyping myself up. She's cute, she's close by, and she seems cool. This could actually go well for once. Famous last words. I walk into the Starbucks, scanning the room for a purple sweater, and there she is. Except, instead of the cute, athletic girl from her photos, what I see is a purple mountain. Like, a literal mountain of gelatinous human being, perched on one of those tiny Starbucks chairs, devouring a plate of cookies like they were going to be outlawed tomorrow. She had a Veni Frappuccino in one hand and a cookie in the other, and let me tell you, she was committed to that snack. I'm talking crumbs flying, whipped cream smeared on her face. It was a scene. Now listen, I'm not here to body shame anyone. People come in all shapes and sizes, and that's fine. But what's not fine is lying about it. Don't call yourself athletic if the only sport you've been playing is professional cookie demolition. Be honest. Put curvy or plus-sized or whatever. This wasn't just an exaggeration. This was a full-blown catfish situation. I stood there for a second, trying to process what I was seeing. My brain was doing that thing where it's desperately trying to reconcile the image in front of me with the person I'd been talking to online. Spoiler alert, it couldn't. At this point, she hadn't noticed me yet, so I had a decision to make. Do I go over there and pretend like nothing's wrong, or do I quietly slink away and save both of us from the awkwardness? I chose door number 2. I casually walked up to the counter, ordered a coffee, made some small talk with the barista to act natural, and then made a beeline for the door. I didn't run or anything, didn't want to draw attention, but I definitely moved with purpose. Once I was outside, I let out the breath I didn't even realize I'd been holding and started heading home. Crisis averted. Or so I thought. A couple of hours later, I get a text. Well, not a text, a wall of text. I'm talking paragraphs upon paragraphs of pure rage. She's calling me a misogynist, a prick, the reason the world is terrible, and oh yeah, she also told me to kill myself. Classy. I'm sitting there reading this absolute novel of insults, and all I can think is, wow, she really went from zero to homicidal in record time. Now, I could have ignored it. I could have just blocked her and moved on with my life. But nope, I couldn't resist. I had to reply. My response? Short and to the point. I didn't stand you up. I just left once I saw your athletic build. Yeah, I know. Savage. But come on, what else was I supposed to say? She straight up lied to me, wasted my time, and then had the audacity to go full keyboard warrior on me. I figured it was fair game. Of course, she didn't take that well. She fired back with more insults, but at that point, I was done. I blocked her, deleted the app, and swore off POF forever. I mean, who needs that kind of drama in their life? So, I was about 18, working at one of those phone kiosks in the mall. Classy job, I know, but hey, it paid the bills. So there was this guy who worked at one of the other shops within eyeshot of my kiosk. He was cute, I'll give him that, tall, decent smile, clearly knew how to work a hair gel bottle, but something about him always felt a little off. Hard to explain. Still, every time he walked past my kiosk, he'd stop and chat me up. At first, it was harmless enough, flirty sure, but nothing too over the top. But then he started asking me out. And when I say asking, I mean like every single day. It was relentless. I'd be over there trying to sell a phone case to someone's grandma, and there he'd be, leaning on my counter like he belonged there, throwing out lines like, "So, when are you gonna let me take you out?" I wasn't really into it, but after weeks of him pestering me, I finally caved. Honestly, I think I was just tired of saying no. It was one of those fine, let's get this over with situations. He suggested drinks at a local pub, which seemed harmless enough. A quick drink, some small talk, and then I'd be done, right? Wrong. Oh, so very wrong I was. Fast forward to the night of the date. I show up at the pub, and he's already there, sitting at a booth with this overly cocky grin on his face like he's just won the lottery. I sit down, and he immediately starts talking about how much he loves beer. Like not just I enjoy a good beer now and then, but full-on beer enthusiast mode. He's naming brands, describing hops, and going on about some microbrewery he wants to visit. I'm sitting there, nodding along, trying to be polite, but in my head I'm thinking, oh cool, you're a beer guy. Great. This is going to be thrilling. Then comes the first red flag. He says he wants to order an appetizer for his beer. I figure he's talking about some bar snacks, maybe some nachos or wings or something. You know, normal food. Nope. This guy gets up, walks to the bar, and comes back with 2 shots of Jack Daniels. For himself. I'm sitting there with my one drink, trying to pace myself like a normal human being, and he's over here treating whiskey like it's an amuse-bouche. By the time I've finished my first drink, he's already put away the equivalent of 4 beers, plus the Jack. And he's not slowing down. He starts getting louder, slurring his words a little, and leaning into that cocky frat boy energy that's about as attractive as a wet sock. At this point, I'm already planning my escape. I excuse myself to use the bathroom, but let's be real, I wasn't just going to the bathroom. Oh no, I was in full-on abort mission mode. I pulled out my phone and texted my best friend. Call me. Emergency. Get me out of here. The plan was simple. She'd call me, I'd fake some urgent excuse, and I'd be out the door before he could even finish his next beer. Foolproof, right? I come back from the bathroom, fully prepared to execute my escape plan, and that's when I notice something. He's no longer sitting across from me. Oh no, he's moved to my side of the booth. Like full-on invaded my personal space, sitting so close I could smell the Jack Daniels on his breath. I sit down, trying to keep my cool, but there's this sinking feeling in my gut that this night is about to get a whole lot worse. And boy was I right. We're sitting there, and he starts getting handsy. At first, it's just little things, his hand brushing against mine, leaning a little too far into my space. But then out of nowhere, he reaches over and grabs the top of my tube top. Before I can even process what's happening, this absolute moron YNKs it down. In the middle of a crowded bar. Both of my boobs are just out there for the whole world to see. For a second, I'm so shocked I don't even react. I just sit there staring at him like, did that really just happen? And then it hits me, oh yes, it did. This dude just exposed me in public like it was some kind of frat house initiation. Well, let me tell you, I'm not the kind of girl who lets something like that slide. Without even thinking, I ball up my fist and punch him square in the face. I'm talking full force, adrenaline-fueled. What the hell is wrong with you kind of punch. His head snaps back, and for a split second, I think he might actually cry. I stand up, pull my top back up, and grab my stuff. As I'm storming out, I hear him yell after me, "You're just another dirty whore who's asking for it." Oh, my God. The audacity. I didn't even look back. I just kept walking, fuming and humiliated, replaying the whole thing in my head, and wondering how the hell I ended up on a date with the human embodiment of a red flag. By the time I got home, my phone was blowing up with texts from my best friend, who was equal parts horrified and laughing her ass off at my retelling of the night. "At least you punched him," she said, which, honestly, was the only silver lining in the whole situation. Looking back on it now, it's one of those stories that's so ridiculous, it's almost funny. Almost. Like, who does that? Who thinks, hey, you know what would really impress this girl? Publicly humiliating her in a bar full of strangers. I still cringe every time I think about it, but hey, at least I got a great worst date ever story out of it. Oh, and for the record, I never saw him at the mall again. I'm pretty sure he quit his job out of sheer embarrassment. Good riddance. So it started with a guy I met online. At first, he seemed all right, nothing special, but he made me chuckle a few times in chatroom talks and also seemed sincerely keen to meet. I was ambitious to think that none of my readers would ever fall into this category of people. Nevertheless, I thought it over and decided as follows. We get together, and from that different locational angle on things, there's no harm in discussing one's life before the public eye. Nothing bad could come of it, please excuse the pun. There was just this one problem going in. I lived a good hour away from him, and he didn't want to drive without getting something in return. Looking back on it now, I realized that should have been my first sign this guy wasn't going to work out. But at the time I thought, hey, fair enough. Gas is expensive these days. So I offered to pay $20 for gas if he would get me there. He agreed. When he showed up, I gave him the cash right away. This wasn't such a big deal, was it? Well, okay, not then. But it was about to become the biggest deal of all. We reached the restaurant, and it looked safe enough to eat in. Not elegant, but still not a total dump. I begin to think to myself, okay, maybe this will be all right after all. He orders food, and the conversation is, well, okay. Not terribly exciting, but not exactly bad either. He wasn't exactly sweeping me off my feet, true, but I figured what the heck. Maybe he's nervous. The first time out with someone is always hard. It's just small talk, and not everyone's good at it. What I didn't realize then is that this was the best behavior he could produce. When the bill arrived, I didn't even think twice, just grabbed it and paid. I had already insisted on paying for my share, so what was the point of making a fuss about it now? I paid the whole thing, $45 for dinner and $7 tip. So I started to feel like I am backing this date at this stage, but whatever, let him have the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he'll come up widely with another novel idea. Spoiler, no. We get back to his place, it's after dinner, and he suggests that we smoke hookah. He'd mentioned earlier that he likes it a lot, and I thought, why not? It was cool. And let's face it, I didn't feel like sitting through another awkward conversation at some coffee house or bar. Catch is, he didn't have any shisha. None. Zero. Zilch. Guess who ends up spending $25 on it? Yep. Me. I'm literally hemorrhaging money on this date by now, but I'm like, okay, fine. One more thing that might make him happy, and perhaps we can still save the night. We managed to get back to his, fix up the hookah and start smoking it. For the first 5 minutes, there was nothing wrong with it. And then out of nowhere, man, he takes a real hard turn to the left. He starts demanding sex. Not asking, not suggesting, demanding. And not in a playful or flirty way, mind you. No, this was almost full-on aggressive, bordering on raping someone. He's going on about how I owe it to him, and that it's only fair because he went to all this trouble for the date. There I sit, shocked senseless. What trouble? I was paying all along. What do you even say to that? I mean, the whole time, I'm just sitting there glaring at him. I was beyond sick of this. He's sitting there, crying about how nobody ever gives him a chance, and how women are so unfair. No actual tears in sight, just these guttural and dramatic sobs that look like you only get in soap operas. Anyway, let go of your drama, for now. I'm only mentioning it because I feel it once again. And that's when he starts doing this weird half-cry thing. Not tonight, not ever. I tell him firmly, and in a tone of finality. I feel this point is probably worth making clear. Because at any rate, by now I'm hardly drawn to him. Like he's lucky I hadn't left through the door by now. When my cab finally arrived, I was so sick of everything that I twitched into it, and for the whole way home, barely shifted my gaze out the window. Upon returning, I examined my wallet and discovered the whole blowout had cost me over $200 between gas, dinner, shisha, and taxi fare. I had practically paid to create the worst date of my life. I'm still angry at myself for not seeing the red flags when I look back on this. The gas money thing? Red flag. The fact that I paid for everything? Red flag. The aggressive, inconsiderate behavior? Huge, flaming red flag. But live and learn, I suppose. At least this date taught me to trust my instincts and never, ever let someone make me feel guilty for their idiocy. Every time I think about it, I cringe so hard that my soul wants to leave my body. It reads like a bad omen and makes me wonder why I asked someone overweight to pass my phone across the table in the dark instead of brushing up against some handsome young light-skinned cameraman type who has nothing but good intentions for me. But alas. But here I am, still around. This is how I wound up going on a Tinder date with someone who is now saved in my phone as Donotancer Penispic. You know where this is going, but trust me, it's worse than you think. I suppose it's off to a fairly ordinary start. 5 years of crucial decisions make or break me. I matched with this guy on Tinder, and at a glance, he looked promising, cute, nicely dressed in all of his photos that he appeared to be leading an orderly life. Over the course of several days, we messaged back and forth by chat app. He had a good sense and was charming too, even normal. Fast forward to SMS, and I met him on the phone. Not one word he said gave off any sense that this menace is dangerous and must be carefully watched out for. He had moved from California to my city for work, new and a bit worried but crazy about making friends. Not long after this, he left. It never occurred to me at all to question his motives, and he seemed quite anxious to meet me in person. Then why not give it a try? We had made plans to eat at some cool little restaurant downtown. On the day of our date, I arrived feeling hopeful yet cautious. I brushed myself up, selected a cute outfit, and went forward with expectations in hand. As soon as I walked in through the door, I saw him standing at the bar. In person, he was just as cute as his photos were. Good, tall, nicely shaven head, a lovely smile. So far, everything seemed fine, or so I thought, and was badly jolted out of that state by what next happened. He seemed bitter by the time I finished sitting down. Not just your average, new kid on the block who has a different unrelated kind of hatred, but seething about life bitter. He detested this city and everyone in it. He wasted no time expressing this. Okay, new age folk. I tried to nod in sympathy, but quickly found that he didn't want or need my empathy. He just wanted to complain. About everything in general. I tried to steer the conversation toward lighter topics, but he wasn't interested. Within 20 minutes, he diverted our conversation to sex. Specifically, he started talking about blowjobs. And has anybody else ever noticed that given the chance, not once has anybody ever asked him to do one of these? I gaped in astonishment as he was so far gone that he even began to gripe about how people here are not open about sex. I'm sitting there thinking, man, we just met. Try something else instead of the blowjob manifesto. But, as anybody who has lived through the Great Watermelon Walk knows, I'm pretty good at being put in awkward positions at a cocktail party. So I just sat back and let him talk, waiting for him to change the subject. Spoiler alert, he didn't. It just got weirder from there. At one point, the waitress came around to our table again. Instead of just saying, thanks, or ordering another drink as anyone would do, he asked her to go to a party at his company. Like that, he just brought it up out of the blue, and without any lead-in. Say, do come to my party. I am hosting one at my house. She replied, no thank you, but it was a warm smile of refusal through her teeth. I almost saw the waitress rolling her eyes as she left. I wanted to crawl into a hole and disappear. The night was already mentally filed away under the rubric of never again by this time. I thought that I could at least finish my drink and leave with grace. I decided to show him a picture of my dog, hoping that might bring the conversation back to more positive subjects. After all, dogs are always safe conversational topics, aren't they? Wrong. Dead wrong. Pulling out my phone, I called up a photograph of my adorable golden retriever and waited for the standard, ah. What I got instead was a smirk. If we are going to share pictures, he teases, pulls out his cell phone, and reveals his own photograph. This time it was a picture of his penis. That tacit. Just like in fact he showed me a picture of his penis. Grandfathered away. In a bar. Just as if that were a routine thing on first dates. I was too stunned to know how to react. My brain just shut down. All I could manage was, wow. Okay. He took this as some sort of approval, and just grinned at me like he had done me a favor. Meanwhile, I was internally screaming. What was happening? Is this real at all? At this point, I knew I had to get out of there. I made up some excuse about being up early the next day, and asked for the check. When our cars were brought to us at the valet stand, I prayed mine would be the first to come. Thank the valet gods it was. I mumbled a quick thanks, have a nice night, and took off before he could say anything else. So I thought that was the end of it. But no. A couple of hours later I got a text from him. Apparently, I dropped my sweater on the way out, and he'd picked it up. Instead of just, offering to meet me so he could return it, he decided to hold my sweater hostage. His exact words, if you want to see your sweater again, you'll have to spend time with me. Needless to say, I blocked him immediately and retitled him as Donotancer Penispic in my contacts. Just in case he ever tried to reach out to me again. To this day I still cannot believe the course that night took. It started out so ordinary, and then turned a hard left into Crazy Town. But hey, at least I got a good story out of it. And if nothing else, it's a reminder that sometimes losing a sweater is a small price to pay for escaping a truly terrible date. Seeing this girl for a little while who I met on the dating app you likely know, Tinder. Earlier that week, we'd agreed I'd pick her up around 8 from her place. Cool, no problem. I'm not a high-maintenance guy. I was even looking forward to it because I thought, hey, maybe this one's not a complete psycho. Anyway, it's the night of the date, and being the responsible, punctual gentleman that I am, I call her at 7:30 just to make sure we're still on. No answer. Alright, no big deal. Maybe she's in the shower or doing whatever girls do before a date. Curling their eyelashes? Summoning demons? I don't know. I wait a little while, and at 8:15 I call again. Still nothing. At this point, I'm starting to feel a little like a loser, but I think, maybe she's just running late. Text her. Nothing. Not even the little. Typing bubbles. Radio silence. Now it's about 8:30, and I've officially entered "you've been stood up, bro" territory. I'm sitting there in my car, staring at my phone, trying to convince myself that maybe her phone died or she got abducted by aliens or some other excuse that doesn't make me feel like a total idiot. But deep down I knew. She wasn't showing up. And let me tell you, there's no lonelier feeling than sitting in your car in your nice date clothes, realizing you've been ditched. It's like the universe gives you a little pat on the back and whispers, "Bless your heart." So, what do you do when you've been stood up? You eat and drink your shame away, obviously. I drove to a random bar, walked in, and ordered food and a drink like the sad sack of rejected romance that I was. I was going to wallow. I earned this wallow. I was halfway through my burger, feeling that sweet combo of self-pity and tequila, when suddenly my phone rings. It's one of my buddies. "Hey man," he says, "I've got 2 girls with me if you want to hang out with us 3. Now let me tell you, that's the kind of call that snaps you right out of your funk. Like, yes, I absolutely want to hang out with you and 2 lovely ladies. What better way to recover from being stood up than by hitting the town with people who actually want to spend time with you? I was back in the game. So, I meet up with them at this really great bar. Not one of those sketchy ones where the floor's sticky and the drinks taste like regret, but a nice place. We're having a blast. Drinks are flowing, conversations are fun, and for the first time that night, I'm starting to feel like maybe it's not such a bad night after all. Then it happens. I walk up to the bar to grab another round of drinks, and there she is. Her. The girl who ghosted me not 2 hours ago, sitting at the bar with some guy. And not just any guy. Oh no, that would be too easy. This guy is taller than me, better looking than me, and to top it all off, he's got a goddamn Australian accent. Now, if you're not familiar with the power of an Australian accent, let me enlighten you. To college-aged girls in America, it's basically like someone handed this guy a cheat code for life. It's like he walked into a room and the universe whispered, "Here's infinite charisma. Go forth, you sexy kangaroo bastard." So there he was, all tall and Aussie, chatting her up like he was straight out of some rom-com. I froze for a second, just standing there like an idiot, processing what I was looking at. I mean, the audacity. But then something clicked in me. I wasn't mad. No. I was inspired. I thought, you know what? Screw it. Let's make this as awkward as humanly possible. So I walk right up to them, big smile on my face, and say, "Hey guys, how's it going?" The look on her face was priceless. You know that deer in the headlights look people get when they've been caught red-handed? Multiply that by 10. She looked like she was trying to figure out if she could spontaneously combust on the spot. And the Aussie guy? He just looked confused, like, who's this random guy, and why is he so cheerful about ruining my game? I wasn't about to let them off the hook, though. Oh no. I leaned into the awkwardness. I asked how their night was going, what they were drinking, whether they'd tried the nachos here. I even made some dumb joke about how it's such a small world. She mumbled something about being here with a friend, and introduced him in a way that was so half-hearted, I almost felt bad for him. Almost. The whole interaction lasted maybe 2 minutes, but it probably felt like an hour to her. By the time I walked away, they both looked like they wanted to crawl under the bar and disappear. And me? I was having a blast. I went back to my friends, told them what happened, and we laughed about it for the rest of the night. Here's the cherry on top. They left the bar shortly after that. I like to think I ruined whatever little date they were having, and honestly, I feel no guilt about it. None. By that point, it was all just comedy to me. I mean, what are the odds? Out of all the bars in the city, we end up at the same one, and she's with some guy who looks like he stepped off the cover of Australian GQ. You can't write this stuff. But wait, there's more. 3 weeks later, she calls me. Out of the blue. Hey, she says, all casual, like nothing ever happened. Do you want to hang out? I almost laughed out loud. Like, really? You think I'm just going to forget about the fact that you ditched me, ignored my calls, and then I caught you out with Captain Kangaroo? Not a chance. I told her as politely as I could that I wasn't interested. She tried to play it off, but I could tell she wasn't expecting to get turned down. And that, my friends, is how I turned a night of rejection into one of my favorite stories to tell at parties. So I met this girl online, and things were really great. She came across really cool, had a great sense of humor, and was really easy to talk to and get on with, so this ticking a lot of boxes for me. We hit it off so well that we decided to meet up for dinner. We meet up at this casual spot. Everything's fine so far. She's a little quieter in person than she was over text. But hey, some people are just like that. I figured she might just need a little time to warm up. We order our food, things are moving along, and the conversation starts to pick up a bit. But then something starts to feel off. I couldn't quite put my finger on it at first, but there was just this vibe. Like she was there, but not really there, you know? Anyway, we decide to order a pitcher of margaritas. I figure sure, why not? Loosen up, have a drink, enjoy the night. We each have one margarita, and I'm mid-sentence, telling some dumb story or whatever, when she just stops talking. Like completely stops. All of a sudden, she's just sitting there, staring at her hands. Not moving, not saying anything. Just looking at her hands like they're the most fascinating thing she's ever seen. So I ask, are you okay? She looks up at me, kind of blinks a few times, and says, oh, I'm sorry, I'm just really drunk. Now this throws me off. Really drunk? We've had one drink each. I'm not exactly a heavyweight, but even I wasn't feeling anything yet. So I say, really? From one margarita? And that's when she drops the bomb. Oh, she says, completely nonchalantly. I've been drinking all day. I sat there for a second, letting that sink in. Drinking. All day. Suddenly, a lot of things started clicking into place. Like there were these little moments in our past conversations where she'd text me things like, hey, I'm a little drunk walking home, keep me company, or just having some wine, what's up? At the time, I didn't think much of it. I figured, hey, people drink, no big deal. But now, sitting across from her as she's zoning out mid-conversation, I start to wonder if maybe this wasn't just a casual thing for her. Before I can even process all of this, she suddenly face-plants into the table. I'm not exaggerating. 1 second, she's sitting there, and the next, her head just drops forward like a sack of bricks. At first, I thought she was joking. It was so over the top that I actually laughed. But then I realized she wasn't moving. Hey, I said, tapping her on the shoulder. Nothing. I tapped her again, a little harder this time, and she finally stirred. She sat up, blinking like she didn't know where she was, and mumbled something about being fine. Spoiler alert, she was not fine. At this point, I'm thinking, okay, time to wrap this up. I call for the check, and when it comes, it's way more than I expected. Like a lot more. I'm looking at the bill, trying to figure out how 2 people racked up such a big tab, and then I realize she'd ordered a bunch of appetizers and extras that I hadn't even noticed. I'm not one to make a big deal about splitting checks or anything, but considering she was barely conscious by this point, I wasn't exactly thrilled about footing the bill. I pay the check, and as we're getting ready to leave, she asks if I can walk her home. Now, under normal circumstances, I'd probably say no. But she's in rough shape, and I can't just leave her like that, so I agree. Big mistake. We start walking, and at first it's fine. The fresh air seems to help her a bit, and she's at least upright and moving. But then, as we're walking, I realize we've been going for a while. Like longer than I expected. So I ask, hey, how much farther is your place? Oh, just another mile, she says. Another mile. Great. But at this point, we're already halfway there, so I figure I might as well keep going. We keep walking, and it's just getting more and more awkward. She's not really talking, I'm not sure what to say, and the whole situation feels increasingly bizarre. Finally, after what feels like an eternity, we get to her place. She invites me in, offers me some water, and then out of nowhere, asks if I want to stay the night. Now, I'm not sure what she thought was going to happen, but I politely decline. I tell her it's been a long night, and I should probably get going. That's when her mood shifts. She's suddenly annoyed, and she straight up kicks me out. Like, no thanks for walking me home. No good night. just a door slamming in my face. So now, I'm standing outside her apartment building, no idea where I am, and I realize I have no clue how to get back to my car. I pull out my phone, open up Google Maps, and start trying to retrace my steps. It's late, I'm tired, and I'm wandering around this unfamiliar neighborhood, just trying to find my way back. Eventually, after what felt like hours, I finally find my car and head home. The whole drive back, I'm just shaking my head, thinking about how the night went so far off the rails. I mean, it started out so normal. Dinner, drinks, a little conversation. And somehow it turned into me babysitting a girl who'd been day drinking, paying for a massive dinner bill, walking 2 miles to her place, and then getting kicked out. I met a girl on the website. Her name is Amanda. She seemed perfect, beautiful, funny, and right from our messages we clearly got along well. So after a few days of chatting, we upgraded to phone calls. That went even better. Her warm and bubbly persona made talking with her easy. We would joke around together on the phone for hours each time, enough to fill a book just with these laughs and stories between us. So when the day came for us to make appointments on each other's company, things were looking up. She directed me somewhere which was neither near my house nor hers. A local wine bar for low-key chic conversation-level experiences perfect for first dates. The night of the date, I drove about 45 minutes to her place. I don't mind traveling by distance. If the person is worth it, it really doesn't matter how far you go. I pulled up to the front of her house in the driveway and immediately noticed that it was a damn nice setup. Something like, wow, okay. I was already dreaming of this potentially heading somewhere, even scoring a second date. Stuff looked pretty good. And then I knocked on that door. First, I was met by her dog. And when I say dog, I'm not talking about some cute little golden retriever, the kind that you could easily hunt rabbits with. No, this was a brood of dog, which seemed almost the size of a horse. It was barking loud, deep barks that shook windows and all over the door as though trying to force his way through, while Amanda was on the other side trying to get her vicious hound under control. I remained standing quietly at the door. After what felt like an eternity, although it's really quite possible it wasn't more than 2 or 3 minutes, she finally succeeded in pushing it open. Look, I'm going to level with you. This is where everything went unquestionably south. Amanda was, shall we say, maybe not the same as she appeared in pictures. By dissimilar, I mean she was at least 50 pounds heavier than her profile photos had suggested. Now I'm not superficial, and I understand that people are not always 100% truthful on dating profiles. Who is? But this was some quite clever advertising. Nevertheless, I told myself, just forget it. After all, possibly she simply hasn't updated her pictures in a long time. Although you are here already, and she looks friendly enough, give her a try. Besides, once we started talking, I discovered she was every bit as charming and funny in real life as she'd been on the phone. Her house was beautiful, I mean beautiful enough for glossy magazines, and the money she must have had flashed before my eyes. The furniture you would expect to see in, say, picture and diagram, all the latest trimmings, tasteful ornaments, and a wine fridge tucked in the corner of her kitchen. I took the mental attitude, well, you've come this far, the dog shows no signs of descending upon you, and she's well off. At the very least, you could make a new friend. So we made for the wine bar, and really it was fine. We chatted nonstop, and she had excellent taste in wine. Sharing a couple of bottles, we talked about everything from our favorite movies and the way back to travel, and I began to relax. I didn't feel that flash of romance, but I didn't feel angry about it either. Just sometimes, things don't turn out as you wish, and that's all right. I thought we could finish the evening on something of a high note, and perhaps part as friends. That is when we shifted to her place. It was all right at the beginning. We continued to chat and laugh, seated on her couch, and I began to feel, well, it is not that bad here now. Maybe I will just stay the night and make the long journey back tomorrow. That is when things changed. Out of nowhere, Amanda stood up, took me by the hand, and led me to another room. I gotta give her credit for one thing. She caught me off guard a bit. It was not that I did not wanna. There were no plans at all. It was just the suddenness of taking me into something so different. We were discussing how overrated Napa Valley is 1 second, and then all of a sudden I am being dragged along her bed. Now do you remember the giant dog? He followed us in. And not only did he wait outside the door for us to walk in, but as soon as we entered, he jumped up onto that bed as if it were his throne. Amanda did not even flinch. She simply laughed and said, "Do not worry about him. He always sleeps with me. He will not bother us tonight. At this point, I am thinking this is different, but I can work with it. After all, I had been drinking. I was not exactly in the mood to argue about it, and maybe this is just how she is. After all, people sometimes are strange about their pets, right? I thought that I can put up with it. Big mistake. Here we are just getting into it, nothing too outrageous, as I try my hardest to ignore the fact that there is a massive dog lying on the bed watching us like some kind of furry chaperone. But just when things are starting to get hot, I feel something wet. It was only for a split second that I froze. My mind could not accept what was happening. And then I knew what it was. The dog. The dog was licking my butt. I was up and running out of that bed faster than at any other time in my life. Amanda looked at me, completely bewildered, as I scrambled to my feet and started backing off towards the door. "Something's wrong," she asked, genuinely surprised. "What's wrong?" I asked, staring at her as if she were mad. "Your dog just licked me in the ass. That's what's wrong." She attempted to laugh it off. "Oh, he's just curious, doesn't mean anything by it." But I would not be dissuaded. I put on my shoes, muttered something about having to leave, and bolted out the door before she or her dog could stop me. The drive home was quiet. I didn't even turn on my radio. I just sat there, reliving the events of tonight in my head and trying to figure out how my life had come to this. I don't think I slept at all that night, when none of that dog's licked tongue lurked on my skin every time I closed my eyes. Met a girl at a party. Almost by accident, I wound up playing it super cool. Like effortlessly cool. I wasn't trying to be mysterious or suave or anything like that. It just kind of happened. Maybe it was the lighting. Maybe it was the music. Or maybe my usual awkwardness was just taking the night off. Whatever it was, things were clicking. We talked for a while, conversation flowed so easily it felt like the universe was giving me a high five. By the end of the night, we'd already decided on a date for the following week. She seemed really into me. Really into me. I could tell she thought I was this confident, laid-back, effortlessly cool guy. And here's the thing, I wasn't. Not even close. But somehow, I'd tricked her into thinking that I was, and I wasn't about to ruin it. At least, not yet. Spoiler alert, I ruined it. The days leading up to the date, I was riding high. I was genuinely excited to see her again, but at the same time, I started feeling a little guilty. Like, what if I couldn't live up to the cool guy version of myself that she'd met at the party? What if she realized I was just a regular, slightly awkward dude who has a bad habit of overthinking everything? I didn't want her to feel like I'd tricked her into liking me, so I came up with what I thought was a brilliant idea. I'd send her a fax. Now, before you judge me too harshly, let me remind you, this was the 90s. Back then, sending a fax wasn't that weird. It was kind of quirky and fun. Or at least, that's what I told myself. I thought it would be a cute way to show her my sense of humor and let her get to know the real me before the date. I'd keep it light, jokey, and totally harmless. I figured she'd see it, have a good laugh, and think, wow, this guy is so charming and different. So I wrote out this whole goofy message about how I was looking forward to our date, threw in a few self-deprecating jokes, and maybe even doodled a little cartoon at the bottom. Honestly, I thought it was a stroke of genius. I faxed it over, sat back, and waited for her to call me laughing about how clever and funny I was. She didn't call. The day of the date rolled around, and I started to feel a little nervous. The lack of response to the fax was concerning. But I figured, hey, maybe she just didn't have time to respond, or maybe her fax machine was broken. Yes, I really thought that. Either way, I convinced myself it wasn't a big deal, and I went to pick her up. The moment she opened the door, I knew something was off. Her smile was polite, but it didn't reach her eyes. Her whole vibe was different. Gone was the fun, flirty energy from the party. Instead, she just seemed disinterested, like she was already regretting saying yes to this date. I tried to shake it off and told myself it was just first date jitters or something. We headed to the restaurant, and I figured once we sat down and started talking, things would loosen up. They didn't. From the second we sat down, it was painfully clear that she no longer wanted to be there. It was like going on a date with someone who was being held hostage. I'd ask her a question, and she'd give me a one-word answer. I'd make a joke, and she'd give me a polite smile that barely lasted a second. At one point, I tried to bring up the fax, thinking maybe it would break the ice. "So, did you get my little message?" I asked with a nervous laugh. "Oh, yeah," she said flatly. That was it. No follow-up, no laugh, no that was cute. Just, oh, yeah. It was like she'd taken all my remaining confidence, crumpled it up, and tossed it in the trash. I kept trying to salvage the night, but it was like trying to revive a corpse. Every time I thought I might be making progress, she'd glance at her watch or stare off into the distance like she was counting down the minutes until she could leave. At one point, she casually mentioned that she was planning to move out of state soon. I couldn't tell if that was true, or if she was just trying to subtly let me know that this wasn't going anywhere. Either way, the message was loud and clear. By the time the check came, I was ready to call it a night. I figured we'd both cut our losses, say an awkward goodbye, and never see each other again. But then, for reasons I still can't fully explain, I decided to go for the kiss. I knew we had zero chemistry. I knew she wasn't interested, but a small, stupid part of me thought, maybe if I kiss her, it'll turn things around. So as we stood outside her door, I leaned in. And not just for a polite little peck, either. No, I went full tilt, tongue and all. To her credit, she didn't pull away. But she also didn't exactly lean into it, either. It was like kissing a mannequin. No movement, no passion, nothing. I swear I could feel her counting the seconds in her head, just waiting for it to be over. When I finally pulled back, she gave me a tight-lipped smile and said, "Well, thanks for dinner." And that was it. No, let's do this again sometime. No, I had a nice time. Just, thanks for dinner. She went inside, and I walked back to my car feeling like the world's biggest idiot. In the end, I guess the facts did its job. It stripped away all the cool guy mystique I'd accidentally built up at the party, and revealed the dorky, awkward guy underneath. The problem was, she wasn't into the dorky, awkward guy. And honestly, I can't blame her. The truth is, I wasn't really being myself at that party. I got lucky and managed to come off as someone I'm not, and it backfired spectacularly. Looking back, I think the biggest lesson I learned from that night is that sometimes it's ruder to be polite than to be honest. I could tell she wasn't feeling it, but instead of being upfront about it, she went through the motions to spare my feelings. And honestly, I probably should have been the one to call it out first. I knew things weren't clicking, but I kept trying to force it because I didn't want to admit defeat. The whole thing was just a mess. Oh, and I also learned that I'm way too dorky for dating. But hey, at least I've got a funny story out of it. Well, might as well go ahead and tell this story to all of you amazing people online. I was on OkCupid at the time, messaging back and forth with this girl who seemed pretty cool. She had a nice profile, a great sense of humor from what I could tell, and her pictures were cute enough that I figured, hey, why not? We hit it off in our chats, so I asked if she'd like to meet up for a bite to eat. She said yes, and we made plans for me to pick her up and head to a local restaurant. The day came, and like I said, I drove down to pick her up. I texted her when I was parked outside, and she replied that she'd be right out. So far, so good, right? Well, that's when the first little flicker of doubt crept in. I decided to step out of my car, so she'd have an easier time spotting me. I stood there for a few minutes, and then I heard it. "Hey, Chickenston." I turned around, and there she was. Now here's the thing, I'm not the kind of guy who gets hung up on appearances. But I'll admit, I was caught off guard. She looked very different from the pictures on her profile. She was easily 60+ pounds heavier, and it was clear those photos were either very old or just strategically cropped. Still, I'm not one to be shallow, so I brushed it off. Weight isn't a deal breaker for me, and I figured I'd give her a chance. "Hey," I said back, trying to sound upbeat, and we got in my car to head off to the restaurant. The drive started out fine enough, just the usual small talk. "How was your day? What kind of music do you like?" You know, the standard stuff. But then about 10 minutes in, she hit me with a curveball. "Chickenston, where do you see our relationship going?" Now let me remind you, this was our first time meeting in person. I barely knew this girl, and here she was asking me to define the trajectory of our future together. I awkwardly laughed and said something like, "Well, I'm not really sure yet. I mean, we just met. I'm on OkCupid because I'm looking to start a relationship, but I think it's a little early to tell where things might go." I thought that would be the end of it, but nope. After a few moments of silence, she turned to me and dropped another bomb. "So, the house you picked me up at? It's not actually mine." My brain hit the brakes harder than my car ever could. She went on to explain that she was currently living there with her ex-boyfriend. Oh, and not just her ex's mom also lived there. But wait, it gets better. Apparently, the mom didn't even know she was staying there. She'd been sneaking in and out of the house, essentially squatting without the mom's knowledge. At this point, I was gripping the steering wheel so hard I thought I might leave indentations in it. I nodded and mumbled something like, "Oh, okay," because what the hell else was I supposed to say? We finally got to the restaurant, and I was hoping things would calm down a bit. Maybe we'd have some decent food, some light conversation, and I could salvage the evening. Nope. The lunch was awkward as hell. Every attempt at small talk felt forced, like we were both just going through the motions. I wasn't exactly thrilled to be there, and I think she could sense that. I was already feeling pretty uncomfortable, but then, as we were finishing up, she asked if we could go to the park. Against my better judgment, I said yes. We drove to a nearby park and started walking around. I was trying to keep things light, asking her about her interests and hobbies, but I was still feeling uneasy about the whole living with my ex and his mom without her knowledge situation. And then, things took another turn for the worse. She got a phone call. I watched as she answered, her expression going from neutral to visibly upset. When she hung up, she turned to me and said, "That was my ex. His mom came home early, and I can't go back to the house right now." I stood there, unsure of what to say, as she stared at me with this pleading look in her eyes. And then she dropped the line that sent my brain into full-on meltdown mode. "Chickenston, can I stay with you tonight? I really want to be your woman." I froze. I didn't even know how to respond. I don't think that's a good idea," I finally managed to say. "I'm really not comfortable with that." I told her I'd drop her off at a Starbucks or something so she could figure things out, but there was no way in hell she was staying at my place. She didn't look happy, but she reluctantly agreed. At this point, I was desperate to get out of this situation. I told her I needed to use the restroom and bolted for the nearest public bathroom. Once I was inside, I pulled out my phone and started frantically texting my friends. "Call me. Tell me you're locked out of the apartment. I need an excuse to leave." Looking back, I probably should have just been honest with her and said I needed to go, but my brain was fried, and I wasn't thinking clearly. Eventually, one of my friends came through and called me. I answered, pretending like it was an urgent situation. "Oh no, you're locked out? Okay, I'll be there soon." I hung up and went back to her, explaining that I needed to go let my friend into my apartment. She seemed disappointed, but she got in the car, and we headed to the nearest Starbucks. When we pulled up, she turned to me again, her eyes welling up with tears. "Please, Chickenston, let me stay with you tonight. I just want to be your woman." I shook my head and told her no, that I just wasn't comfortable with the situation. That's when she started crying. Not just a few tears, full-on, ugly body-racking sobs. I sat there frozen, unsure of what to do, and then I noticed it. The smell hit me first. A strong, unmistakable odor. I glanced down and realized, to my absolute horror, that she had pissed herself. Right there, in the front seat of my car. I didn't even know what to say. My brain just kind of short-circuited. I think you should get out," I finally managed to stammer. She climbed out of the car, still crying, and I pulled away as quickly as I could. I drove to the nearest gas station, bought some cleaning supplies, and spent the next half hour scrubbing the front seat of my car, all while questioning every decision I'd made that day. Needless to say, there was no second date. I stayed off OkCupid for a while after that, and to this day, every time I pass a gas station chicken salad sandwich, I feel a shiver run down my spine. Oh man, this one takes the cake. Okay, buckle up, because this is the story of how I ended up dating a drug dealer. Yes, you read that right. Why I somehow stuck around longer than I should have, and how I learned that an all-women's college does absolutely nothing for your ability to judge men. Let me set the stage. I'd been seeing this guy for a little while. We weren't super serious or anything, but I thought he was cool enough, funny, charming, and way too confident for his own good. He had this whole bad boy vibe going on, which in hindsight should have been a red flag, but at the time I thought, hey, maybe this will be exciting. Spoiler alert, it was not the kind of excitement I was looking for. So one night, we're out driving around. He's playing music way too loud, and I'm just kind of vibing, enjoying the ride, when he suddenly says, "Hey, I need to stop somewhere real quick." I figured he meant a gas station, or maybe a friend's house. Normal stuff. But no, he pulls into the middle of the projects, and not like the edge or a well-lit area, but deep into the heart of it. Then he parks in this abandoned parking lot that looks like something out of a horror movie. You know the type. Cracked asphalt, weeds growing up through the concrete, not a single streetlight working. That parking lot. And then he just leaves. He doesn't say much, just something vague like, "I'll be back in a minute," and gets out of the car. I'm sitting there like, wait, what? You're just leaving me here? But before I can even process it, he's gone, disappearing into the shadows like some kind of sketchy Batman. I'm left alone in the dark in the middle of nowhere, in a parking lot that's clearly seen better days. My phone had like 12% battery, and I'm thinking, this is how it ends. This is how I die. Minutes crawl by, and I'm trying to distract myself by scrolling through my phone, but my brain is going full panic mode. Every noise I hear makes me jump. Was that a footstep? A cat? A murderer? I was half convinced I'd end up on the news. Local woman found in abandoned parking lot, boyfriend nowhere to be found. After what felt like an eternity, but was probably closer to 30 minutes, he finally comes back. And oh boy, he does not come back empty-handed. He's carrying a jar of the stankiest weed I've ever smelled in my life, like you could get a contact high just being near it. But that's not all. He's also got these bags and bags of other stuff. Pills. Crack. Things I didn't even know what to name. I'm sitting there staring at him like, what the hell did I just sign up for? But instead of saying anything, I just kind of laugh nervously, because what else do you do in that situation? We drive off, and I'm trying to play it cool, but my mind is racing. Is this guy a full-on drug dealer? What did I just witness? Am I an accomplice now? He's talking like it's just another Tuesday, completely unbothered, and I'm over here reevaluating all my life choices. The night doesn't end there, though. Oh no, it gets better, or worse, depending on how you look at it. He drops me off at my place, and for some reason, I'm still trying to salvage the evening. I don't know if it was adrenaline or denial or just plain stupidity, but when he leans in for a kiss goodnight, I go with it. And as we're kissing, my hands kind of wander. Just casually exploring like you do. That's when I feel something hard near his waist, right where his belt buckle should be. Except it's not his belt buckle. I pull back, confused, and ask, hey, what's the gun for? Because yes, it was a gun. A whole-ass gun, just chilling on his hip like this was the Wild West or something. Without missing a beat, he smiles and says, oh, don't worry about it. Just understand that when you're with me, you're safe. 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 I didn't feel safe. I felt like I was one wrong move away from being an accessory to a crime I didn't even know about. Then, as if that wasn't unsettling enough, he casually adds, hey, you want to go into the woods and shoot shit? And that's when it hit me. He might have meant me. I'm not saying he did, but let's just say the thought crossed my mind, and I decided I wasn't about to find out. I politely declined, saying something about being tired, and practically bolted into my house. I locked the door behind me and just stood there for a minute, trying to process everything. What just happened? Did I actually just date a drug dealer with a gun? Now here's the kicker. You'd think this would be the end of the story, right? That I'd see the red flags, cut ties, and never look back. Nope. The worst part is I kept dating him. For months. Months. I don't even have a good excuse for it. He wasn't a bad guy, believe it or not. He was funny, charming, and always made me laugh. But, there was also the whole drug dealer with a gun thing, which, yeah, in hindsight, maybe should have been a deal breaker. We kept dating until he eventually went to jail, which, let's be honest, was probably the universe stepping in and saying, girl, what are you doing with your life? When he got locked up, I finally had my wake-up call and moved on. But to this day, I look back on that whole experience and just shake my head. This is what happens when you go to an all-women's college, by the way. Male judgment? None. Zero. I had no idea how to spot a red flag, let alone a whole parade of them. If a guy was funny and paid attention to me, I was like, sure, let's see where this goes. Spoiler, it usually went nowhere good. I still laugh every time I think about the most awkward and unintentionally hilarious date I've ever witnessed. To be clear, it wasn't my date, but I had front row seats to the entire train wreck. It all went down in one of those cozy, low-key coffee shops you find in every college town. You know the type, cheap coffee, mismatched furniture, local art on the walls. It was a perfect spot for broke college students trying to impress someone without spending more than $5. I used to go there a lot with my sketchbook to practice drawing people, and that night, I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. I'd grabbed a corner seat with a good view of the room, quietly sketching people as they came and went. That's when I noticed a couple sitting at a nearby table. It was obvious they were on a first date. There's a certain awkwardness that's hard to miss. She was petite, with a shy demeanor, nervously sipping her coffee and glancing around like she wasn't sure what to do with her hands. He, on the other hand, was the complete opposite, loud, energetic, and clearly trying to impress her. At first, I thought, okay, maybe he's just nervous. First dates can be weird. But then I tuned into their conversation, and oh man, it was something else. The guy was in the middle of explaining the plot of The Rock. Yes, the 1996 action movie starring Sean Connery and Nicolas Cage. At first, I thought it was just a passing comment. Maybe he'd toss out a quick summary and move on to something else. But no, this man was not summarizing the movie. He was dictating the entire screenplay, scene by scene, line by line, with commentary. I kid you not, he was breaking down the nuances of Nicolas Cage's character like he was lecturing a film studies class. He leaned in, gesturing wildly with his hands, his voice full of enthusiasm. So like Nicolas Cage plays this FBI chemical weapons specialist, right? And he's kind of a nerd, but he's also a total badass when the chips are down. It's brilliant. And Sean Connery? Oh man, he's this ex-con who escaped from Alcatraz, and he's the only one who knows how to break into Alcatraz. Isn't that insane? Like, it's just such a clever concept. He wasn't even pausing to breathe. Meanwhile, the poor girl was doing her best to be polite. I could tell she was trying. She gave him a couple of ahas, and oh, that's interesting here and there, and even tried to steer the conversation in another direction. At one point, she said something like, "Oh, that reminds me of this other movie I saw recently." But he completely steamrolled her. He cut her off with a quick, "Oh, where was I?" and dove right back into describing how Sean Connery's character steals a Humvee and leads a high-speed chase through the streets of San Francisco. By this point, I was losing it. I was trying to sketch this guy, but I kept having to stop because I was laughing so hard. I mean, who does this? Who goes on a first date and spends 20 minutes describing the plot of The Rock? The girl's patience was honestly impressive. She smiled, nodded, and even tried to make eye contact a few times, but as the minutes dragged on, I could see her resolve starting to crack. Her shoulders slumped, her smile became strained, and she started checking her watch and her phone in turns. It was like watching someone slowly realize they'd made a terrible mistake. The guy, of course, was completely oblivious. He was too busy describing the brilliant tension in the scene where Nicolas Cage has to defuse a chemical weapon while under fire. And the green balls of VX gas? Genius. Absolute genius. You can't make this stuff up. He actually slapped the table for emphasis, which made her flinch. I almost felt bad for her, but at the same time, I couldn't look away. It was like watching a slow-motion car crash. Horrible, but you just can't stop staring. After what felt like an eternity, she finally snapped. Well, not snapped exactly, but she reached her breaking point. She put her coffee cup down, plastered on a fake smile, and said, "Hey, I'm really sorry, but I've got a big test on Monday, and my mom's coming into town tomorrow, so I think I need to head out." It was the verbal equivalent of pulling the emergency brake. The guy, bless his clueless heart, stood up and started putting on his jacket, fully expecting to walk her out. But before he could even process what was happening, she grabbed her bag, bolted for the door, and called over her shoulder, "Later," with a little wave. The look on his face was priceless. He stood there for a moment, jacket half on, trying to figure out what had just happened. Then he slowly sat back down, looking genuinely confused. I almost felt bad for him. Almost. But then I thought about the girl and how she'd just endured 20 minutes of The Rock fanboying and decided she was the real MVP. After she left, the guy stayed at the table for a while, staring into his coffee like it held the answers to life's greatest mysteries. I finished my sketch, packed up my stuff, and left before he could start explaining the plot of Con Air to someone else. That night taught me two things. First, some people are so oblivious to social cues that they'll talk about Nicolas Cage movies until their date literally runs away. And second, not everyone can appreciate the magic of Nick Cage. It was 2009, maybe 2010, back when I was still in the early days of dating this girl who would eventually become my wife. We'd been out a couple of times already, dinner, drinks, and things were going pretty well. For our third date, I wanted to step it up a notch, do something memorable, something that would blow her away. So, I got tickets to see Poison and Def Leppard. She loved both bands, I loved both bands, and I figured, what better way to impress her than with a night of hair metal greatness? It was going to be perfect. Or so I had thought. Now let me start this by saying that I have no one to blame but myself for what happened. Looking back, the warning signs were there, but in my excitement to make the night special, I ignored every single one of them. The first mistake? The gas station chicken salad sandwich. I'd been running around all day, trying to get everything ready and make sure we got to the concert on time. By the time I was on my way to pick her up, I was starving. Like stomach growling, lightheaded. I might actually keel over starving. We'd agreed to skip dinner before the show, so we wouldn't be late, but I knew I couldn't make it through the night without something in my stomach. So, I stopped at a gas station. Now, I don't know if you've ever had the pleasure of dining on gas station cuisine, but let me tell you, the options are limited. I scanned the shelves, hot dogs on those metal rollers that looked like they'd been there since the Reagan administration, some questionable sushi that I wouldn't have touched with a 10-foot pole, and then, there it was, the chicken salad sandwich. It was neatly wrapped, sitting in the refrigerated case, looking all innocent and harmless. I grabbed it, paid the cashier, and inhaled it in the car on the way to pick her up. Did I think about the fact that I was eating mayonnaise-based chicken salad from a gas station? Nope. Not for a second. Fast forward to the concert. We're in the VIP section, because I was really trying to show her a good time, and everything is going great. Poison comes out, Bret Michaels is killing it, and the crowd is electric. She's having a blast, I'm having a blast, everything is going perfectly. Until it wasn't. About halfway through Def Leppard's set, I felt it. That first uneasy rumble in my stomach. At first, I told myself it was nothing. Maybe a little indigestion. No big deal. But then the rumble turned into a sharp cramp, and I realized I might be in trouble. Still, I didn't want to ruin the night, so I tried to power through it. I sat there, clapping along to pour some sugar on me, pretending everything was fine, but inside, I was starting to panic. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. "I'll be right back," I told her, trying to sound casual as I got up and made my way to the restroom. What greeted me there was nothing short of a nightmare. Every single toilet was clogged and overflowing, the floors were slick with God knows what, and the smell was enough to make my eyes water. There was no way I was sitting down in there. No way. I decided to tough it out. I'll just hold it, I thought. I'll hit the VIP bar restroom on the way out. So, I went back to my seat, but by now I was sweating. Not the fun, concert-induced kind of sweat, either. This was panic sweat. The kind that makes you feel like your body knows something terrible is about to happen, even if your brain hasn't caught up yet. When the show finally ended, I made a beeline for the VIP bar. By some miracle, there was an open stall, and I barely made it in time. What followed was, well, let's just say it was a cleansing experience. It was bad. Real bad. The kind of bad that makes you question every life choice that led you to this moment. As I sat there, trying to maintain some shred of dignity, I could hear the guys at the sinks gagging and complaining about the smell. One of them even shouted, "What the hell died in there?" I won't lie, I giggled a little. I mean, what else can you do in a situation like that? Once I was done, I cleaned up, washed my hands, and rejoined my date, feeling 100 pounds lighter. Crisis averted, right? Not quite. We made our way to the car, and I was feeling pretty good, relieved even. But as soon as I started driving, I felt it again. Round 2. This time, it was worse. My stomach was doing somersaults, and I was getting what I can only describe as poo contractions. Every 2 to 3 minutes, a wave of agony would hit me, and I'd have to death grip the steering wheel to keep from losing control of both the car and my bowels. I was sweating like a sinner in church, my shirt sticking to my back, and my date, bless her heart, noticed. "Are you okay?" she asked, looking genuinely concerned. Yeah, I'm fine," I lied, trying to sound normal while simultaneously clenching every muscle in my body. And then, in my infinite wisdom, I had an idea. A terrible, stupid idea. If I just fart a little, I thought, I'll feel better. Just a little release, and I'll be fine. Big mistake. Huge. The moment I tried to let out a little gas, my body betrayed me. What I thought would be a harmless fart turned into a full-blown disaster. The soft-serve ice cream machine in my shorts exploded, and I immediately realized I had made a grave error. I slammed on the brakes, pulled the car over to the side of the road, and bolted into the woods. "I'll be right back," I yelled over my shoulder as I disappeared into the darkness. My date just sat there, probably wondering what the hell was going on. Once I was deep enough into the woods to ensure some semblance of privacy, I let nature take its course. It was not my finest moment. I ended up using my wife beater as toilet paper because, well, desperate times call for desperate measures. When I finally emerged from the woods, disheveled and humiliated, I got back in the car and mumbled something about bad gas station food. She didn't say much, just nodded and smiled sympathetically. Now, you'd think a night like that would be enough to end any budding relationship. I mean, who wants to keep dating the guy who shit himself on the third date? But here's the crazy part. She stuck around. Not only that, but she actually laughed about it later. And somehow, against all odds, we made it work. We've been married for 12 years now and have 3 kids. What a turnout, EY. The late 90s. A magical time when the internet was still in its awkward teenage years. Dial-up connections screeched like banshees. Chat rooms were the Wild West of human interaction, and an entire generation was learning what it meant to cautiously trust text on a screen. This was the era when I, a young and naive internet enthusiast, had my first brush with deception. A brush so jarring, so utterly ridiculous, that it left me with internet trust issues I carry to this very day. I was a high school kid with a fresh AOL account and an endless curiosity for this newfangled thing called the internet. My parents were thrilled that I wasn't hogging the landline as much anymore. Well, except when I was connected to the internet, which hilariously did hog the phone line. And I was thrilled because AOL chat rooms were the closest thing to socializing that didn't require me to physically leave my bedroom. Introverts, you feel me? One day, while lurking in a local chat room, because yes, back then, chat rooms were often filtered by geographic location, I struck up a conversation with a girl. Let's call her Internet Girl. She seemed cool, witty, friendly, and as curious about the world as I was. The conversation flowed easily, and before long, we were chatting daily. It was like hitting the jackpot for lonely internet kids. I had found a person. Naturally, as our chats became more frequent, we decided to exchange pictures. Now keep in mind, this wasn't the instant gratification world of Instagram or Snapchat. Oh no, this was the era of grainy, low-resolution photos sent via email attachments. You'd stare at that file name like it was a treasure chest, waiting for it to download pixel by pixel over the course of several excruciating minutes. Patience wasn't just a virtue back then, it was a survival skill. When her picture finally finished loading, I saw a skinny, dark-haired girl standing next to a moderately sized blonde girl. I assumed, as one might, that the skinny, dark-haired girl, let's call her Picture Girl, was Internet Girl. Why? Because that's how this works, right? You send someone your picture, and the assumption is that the primary subject of the frame is you. This was my first mistake. Rookie error, really. Our online chats continued, now layered with the added thrill of having a face to associate with the words. Then we started talking on the phone. She had a nice voice, soft, slightly shy, but warm. We'd spend hours talking about music, movies, school, and our dreams for the future. It felt like we were building something, albeit through the rudimentary tools of late 90s technology. Eventually, the inevitable happened. We decided to meet in person. She suggested a public place, which, looking back, was honestly pretty smart. Catfishing wasn't a term yet, but people were already wary about the possibility of meeting a 40-year-old man pretending to be a 17-year-old girl. Her reasoning was simple. In case you're not who you say you are. Fair enough. I agreed, and we set a date to meet at the food court in the local mall. Romantic, I know. The day arrived, and I was nervous but excited. I wore my best mall casual outfit, probably cargo pants and a graphic tee because hello the 90s. I sat there, anxiously scanning the crowd, waiting for the skinny dark-haired girl from the picture to appear. And then, like a scene out of a sitcom, she did. Well, sort of. This girl walks up to me, dark hair, skinny frame, and says, "Hi, are you Phil Zig?" Obviously not my real screen name, but you get the idea. My heart skipped a beat. "Yes," I said, with the enthusiasm of a puppy greeting its owner. "Wow, Internet Girl, you're a lot better looking in real life." Cue awkward silence. Her face twisted into a confused expression, and she replied, "Oh, I'm not Internet Girl. I'm her friend. Internet Girl is over there." She pointed, and my heart sank faster than my internet connection when someone picked up the phone. Walking toward me was the moderately sized blonde girl from the picture, the one I had assumed was just a friend in the background. She looked nervous, and as she got closer, she immediately launched into an apology. "I'm so sorry," she said, avoiding eye contact. "I lied. I'm not the girl in the picture. That's my friend. I just wanted you to like me for who I am." Now, I'd like to pause here and clarify something. I have no issue with people being who they are. I didn't care about her size or her hair color or any of that. What I cared about, what absolutely shattered me in that moment, was the lie. The sheer brazenness of it. She had spent weeks letting me believe she was someone else. Weeks. And for what? To spring this awkward, doomed from the start first meeting on me in the middle of a food court? But being the polite teenager I was, and probably a little too stunned to react otherwise. I decided to roll with it. It's fine, I lied through my teeth. Let's get something to eat. We grabbed food from one of the vendors, probably Sparrow because this was peak mall food court culture, and sat down to eat. I tried to make small talk, but it was like trying to squeeze water from a stone. Any chemistry we'd had online had evaporated the moment the truth came out. She was clearly nervous, and I was too busy replaying the whole situation in my head, wondering how I hadn't seen this coming. After a painfully awkward meal, we decided to drive around for a bit. Why? I don't know. Maybe I was still trying to salvage the situation. Maybe I didn't want to be that guy who just bailed. But let me tell you, driving aimlessly with someone you've just discovered lied to you is not the recipe for a romantic evening. It's the recipe for a slow, agonizing countdown to the moment you can finally say, "Well, I should probably get you home." When I dropped her off, I thought that was the end of it. Sure, the date was terrible, but at least it was over. Or so I thought. The next day, I got an email from her. It was long, rambling, and full of accusations about how rude I had been, how shallow I was, and how I couldn't look past appearances to like her for who she was. She painted herself as the victim, conveniently ignoring the part where she had deliberately misled me from the very beginning. I sat there, staring at the email, my frustration bubbling over. Finally, I replied with a single sentence. "I don't like you because you're a liar." Harsh? Maybe. Honest? Absolutely. I hit send and never heard from her again. And honestly, good riddance.